I discovered my dad was messaging other women while my mom was in chemotherapy. What I did with that information was not right, but I do not know if I regret it. There are discoveries that change the image you have of someone forever, that have no going back. That before that moment, the person was one thing, and afterward they are another, and there is no way to see the previous version without what you now know also being in the picture. I was 23 years old when I discovered my dad was messaging other women. It was not the worst possible moment to find out. The worst possible moment was the exact moment when I found out. My mom had been 6 months into chemotherapy treatment. My maternal grandmother had died 2 months earlier, and my dad, who presented himself to the family as the one holding everything together, had a messenger full of conversations with women who were not my mom. My name is Fernanda. I am 23 years old. I'm a business administration student, and I live with my parents and my younger brother Diego, who is 19. My dad's name is Hector. He is 51. He is a supervisor at a manufacturing plant, and until the day I found those conversations was the person I would have described as my reference for what a responsible man should be. My mom's name is Rosario. She is 48. She is a seamstress. And in the period when all of this happened, she was simultaneously dealing with a breast cancer diagnosed in January, the death of her mother in March, and the recovery from chemotherapy side effects that left her without energy for entire days. Diego and I had been functioning as the daily support of the household during those months. Cooking, accompanying mom to appointments, managing the logistics of medications and care. While my dad worked and paid and was present in the way someone is present when they're physically in the same house, but emotionally somewhere else. The messenger situation started because Diego opened a Facebook account for my dad, not with any specific purpose. My dad had asked us to help him connect with some coworkers who used that network. Diego did it on a Sunday, and 3 days later, I noticed my dad would not put his phone down. I'm not going to pretend that what I did next was something imposed on me. It was a decision. I took my dad's phone while he was in the shower, not because I had certainty I was going to find something, but because something in the way he was guarding it had activated an alarm I did not yet know was founded. What I found in Messenger was enough for that alarm to stop being a possibility and become certainty. 5 conversations. 5 different women. Messages asking for meetups. Messages using language that left no doubt about the nature of what he was seeking. Messages from the last 3 weeks. While my mom was recovering from her second chemotherapy cycle, I went to the bathroom, closed the door, and stayed there for a time I cannot measure precisely, but that was long enough for Diego to knock on the door, asking whether I was okay. I told him yes, that I would be out in a moment. What I processed in that bathroom was a question that had answers I did not like any of. What did I do with this? Option 1, tell my mom. Impossible at that moment. My mom was physically weakened, emotionally devastated by her mother's death, and in a medical treatment process where additional stress could have real consequences for her health. Telling her at that moment was not an option I could consider without feeling I was hurting her. Option 2, tell my dad I knew. Have the direct conversation. That option generated an anger in me I did not know I could contain in a conversation that required calm. And I had no certainty what that conversation would produce. Was he going to promise to stop? Deny it? Promise and not follow through? Option 3, do nothing. Keep what I knew. Continue in the same house with that information. Watch my dad sit at dinner with my mom and act like the man I had believed he was. That option was the one that cost me most. Option 4, what I chose. And while executing it, I knew it was not completely right, and I was executing it anyway. What I did took 2 days of planning. I accessed my dad's account. I changed the password from a device that was not mine. I took screenshots of the most explicit conversations. I got a prepaid SIM card, and from a number he would not recognize, I sent him a message. The message said I knew what he had been doing, that I had screenshots, that if he did not deposit 5,000 pesos into an account number, I was going to give him in the next 24 hours those screenshots were going to reach the right people. I'm not going to romanticize what I did. What I did has a name, and that name is extortion. The fact that the person being extorted was my dad and the reason was legitimate does not change what it was. I say it this directly because if there is anything I learned from all of this, it is that calling things by their name, even when it is uncomfortable, is the only thing that lets you understand what you actually did. My dad made the deposit the following day. I do not know exactly what happened in his head during those 24 hours. I do not know whether he thought it was someone connected to the women he was messaging. I do not know whether he suspected it could be me or Diego. What I know is that he made the deposit, and that in the weeks that followed, his behavior at home changed in ways that were visible. More present, less attached to his phone, more attentive with my mom. With the money, I took my mom and Diego to eat at a restaurant my mom liked and that we had not been to in months. My mom was having a good day that week. She had energy. She laughed at things. She told me about projects she had for when the treatment ended. That afternoon was one of the best of that difficult period, and it was paid for with money I had taken from my dad through threat. Both of those things are true at the same time. I did not tell Diego what I had done. I still have not told him. I did not tell anyone until now. I have carried this alone for months, and there's a part of me that needed to tell it, even if only this way, because the weight of having it only inside has become harder over time and not easier. What I think about what I did has several layers that do not resolve easily among themselves. The first layer, what my dad did, was a real betrayal. Not toward me specifically, toward my mom, who was at the most vulnerable moment of her adult life. Toward the image all of us in the family had of him, toward the version of our family we had been sustaining together in a period that required everyone to be where they said they were. The second layer, what I did, was also a betrayal, of a different kind. I used information I had to obtain something he did not give me voluntarily. I threatened him. I manipulated him with fear. The fact that the object of that manipulation was money I used in a way that seemed right to me does not change the mechanism. The third layer, the immediate result, was that my dad changed his behavior. I do not know whether that change is permanent. I do not know whether it is because he genuinely understood something or simply because he is afraid whoever contacted him will come back. I do not know whether at some point he will connect the dots and know it was me. I do not know what happens if that occurs. The fourth layer, the hardest, I do not know whether I regret it. And that absence of clear regret worries me more than any other part of this story. Because if I regretted it, I would have something to process cleanly. The absence of clear regret tells me there is something in me that still believes what I did had a justification that made it different from what it was. And that belief is what needs the most work. My mom finished treatment 2 months ago. The doctors are optimistic. She is gradually regaining energy. My dad continues to be more present than before. I do not know whether that will last. I do not know whether what exists between my parents is something that can sustain itself long-term with what I know I know. I do not know when, if ever, I will have the direct conversation with my dad. I do not know whether I will tell my mom at some point. What I do know is that the version of the man I believe my dad was no longer exists for me. And that loss, even though he remains physically present, is a real loss I am still processing. What I want you to take from this story does not take the form of clean advice, because the story is not clean. It takes the form of some questions I think are worth asking. When you discover something that damages the image of someone you love, and you cannot tell anyone in that moment because the moment does not allow it, what do you do with that information while you wait for the moment to come? Are there ways of acting from that place that, even when they come from understandable anger, produce additional harm you also have to carry? And what happens when what you did worked in its immediate objectives, but left you with questions about yourself that have no easy answer? I do not have the answers. I am looking for them. And I believe looking for them honestly is more useful than pretending what I did was clearly right or clearly wrong. Both things at once is where I live with this. If this story reached you, comment. What would you have done in that situation? Do you believe there are circumstances where acting incorrectly can be justified, or does the mechanism always matter regardless of the result? Like if you believe discovering a parent's infidelity at the family's most vulnerable moment is one of the most specific and least talked about pains that exist. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who is carrying something difficult alone and who might need to know that not everything has a clean answer. Reflection to take with you. Justified anger does not make all the actions it produces right, but it also does not automatically make them wrong in a way that deserves no nuance. What does deserve attention is honesty about what you did and why you did it. That honesty, even if only with yourself, is what determines whether what you lived leaves you with learning or only with weight.